Every week, Hazel made us laugh with a cheerful maid and what felt like the perfect American family. But what no one saw was how many of those familiar faces would later disappear forever. Some died in shocking accidents no one expected. Others were found lifeless in their own homes. Stay with us as we honor and uncover what really happened to the beloved cast of Hazel. Shirley Booth as Hazel Burke. Shirley Booth was born on August 30th, 1898, in New York City, USA. At 63 years old, she played Hazel Burke, the sharp-witted, warm-hearted housemaid in Hazel. Her performance became the emotional core of the show, turning a simple sitcom into a lasting television classic. Behind that success, Shirley's personal life carried a quiet weight that shaped her intensity on screen. Her first marriage to Ed Gardner, the creator of Duffy's Tavern, ended in divorce. She later married William H. Baker, Jr., a U.S. Army corporal, and for a time, stability seemed possible. But when Baker died of heart disease after 14 years of marriage, Shirley was left devastated, choosing never to remarry. That loss deepened her emotional reserve, and many believed it fueled the raw vulnerability she brought to roles like Come Back, Little Sheba, and The Matchmaker, performances that secured her an Academy Award and lasting recognition across stage and film. As the years passed, her body began to fail her in ways she could not control. She suffered a stroke that left her mobility impaired, and over time, her vision deteriorated into near blindness. A severe hip fracture further restricted her independence, confining her to a quieter, more isolated life. Even after stepping away from major roles, she briefly returned in projects like A Touch of Grace and lent her voice to The Year Without a Santa Claus, before ultimately retreating from the spotlight as her health continued to decline. Shirley Booth passed away on October 16, 1992, at the age of 94, at her home in North Chatham, Massachusetts, following complications related to her declining health and hip injury. She was laid to rest in the Baker family plot at Mount Hebron Cemetery in New Jersey after a private memorial service. With an estimated net worth of around $5 million, she left behind not just wealth, but a legacy defined by rare artistic achievement and a life shaped as much by quiet sorrow as by extraordinary success. Bobby Buntrock as Harold Sport Baxter. Bobby Buntrock was born on August 4, 1952, in Denver, Colorado, USA. At 9 years old, he played Harold Sport Baxter, the kind-hearted young boy in Hazel. His natural charm made him one of the most beloved child actors of the 1960s, helping anchor the show's family dynamic and emotional appeal. Unlike many child stars, Bobby's early success did not come with visible family turmoil, but the real struggle began after the spotlight faded. When Hazel ended, he found it difficult to transition into adult roles, quietly eroding both his confidence and financial stability. Moving away from Hollywood to South Dakota, he attempted to build a normal life, but the absence of acting opportunities and the pressure of lost fame weighed heavily on him. The bright, promising career that once included appearances in shows like The Virginian and earlier works such as Wagon Train slowly disappeared, leaving behind uncertainty and unfulfilled potential. After stepping away from acting, Bobby lived a quieter life in Keystone, South Dakota, focusing on finishing school and staying close to his family. His brief return to television with guest appearances in The Virginian marked the final chapter of his career before he fully retired from the industry. The distance from Hollywood did not erase the contrast between his early fame and his later obscurity, as his life gradually settled into a routine far removed from the spotlight that once defined him. Bobby Buntrock died on April 7, 1974, at the age of 21, in a tragic car accident in South Dakota, when his vehicle veered off a bridge under construction and plunged into floodwaters, leaving him trapped inside. He was buried at Keystone Cemetery, marking the end of a life that had begun with so much promise. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at around $100,000, a modest figure that stood in stark contrast to the fame he once held, and a reminder of how fleeting early success can be. Whitney Blake, as Dorothy Baxter. Whitney Blake was born on February 20th, 1926, in Eagle Rock, Los Angeles, USA. At 35 years old, she played Dorothy Baxter, the elegant and composed wife of George Baxter in Hazel. Her performance brought warmth and sophistication to the series, helping define the emotional tone of the Baxter family. Her personal life, however, was marked by emotional strain that deeply influenced her journey. Whitney married Tom Baxter at a young age, and together they had 3 children, including future actress Meredith Baxter. But the marriage ended in divorce during a crucial period of her early career, forcing her to raise 3 children alone while trying to maintain her place in Hollywood. The pressure of single motherhood and an unstable personal life made it difficult to secure consistent roles, even as she continued appearing in series like Perry Mason and Bonanza. When she was later written out of Hazel alongside DeFore, it felt like another abrupt turning point, pushing her to reconsider her entire path in the industry. Instead of fading away, Whitney made a bold transition behind the scenes. She shifted into writing and producing, eventually co-creating the successful sitcom One Day at a Time with her husband Alan Mannings, a project that ran for years and redefined her career. Yet her life was once again shaken when she was diagnosed with esophageal cancer. This disease progressed rapidly and left little time for recovery, cutting short a second chapter that had only just begun to flourish. Whitney Blake passed away on September 28, 2002, at the age of 76, just 7 months after her diagnosis, at her home in Edgartown, Massachusetts. She was cremated, and her ashes were kept by her family. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million, she left behind a legacy not only as an actress, but as a creator who rebuilt her life after loss, proving that even after being pushed aside, it is still possible to write a new ending. DeFore, as George Baxter. DeFore was born on August 25, 1913, in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, USA. At 48 years old, he played George Baxter, the responsible, often overwhelmed employer of Hazel in Hazel. His calm, grounded presence balanced the show's humor and gave the story a strong family anchor. Behind his steady on-screen image, Don faced unexpected professional setbacks that left a lasting mark on his career. He had built a respected name through the adventures of Ozzie and Harriet and films like It Happened on Fifth Avenue, even serving as president of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences and helping bring the Emmy Awards to national television. Yet, when Hazel shifted networks, he was suddenly written out of the show after 4 seasons, a decision that left him feeling deeply betrayed after years of dedication. At the same time, his attempt to run the Silver Banjo barbecue restaurant at Disneyland turned into a difficult venture, with management struggles eventually forcing its closure, adding further disappointment to an already challenging period. Despite these setbacks, Don continued working in television, taking on roles that differed from his earlier image, including appearances in The Virginian and The Men from Shiloh, where he even portrayed darker characters far removed from his usual comedic roles. His long-standing marriage to Marion Holmes, whom he married in 1942, remained one of the few constants in his life, providing stability through the ups and downs of fame and career uncertainty. DeFore passed away on December 22, 1993, at the age of 80 due to cardiac arrest in Santa Monica, California. His remains were cremated and placed at Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery in Los Angeles. With an estimated net worth of around $3 million, he left behind a legacy as a respected television figure whose contributions helped shape the early era of American TV, even as his career ended with a sense of unfinished recognition. Maudie Prickett, as Maudie Prickett, was born on October 25, 1914, in Portland, Oregon, USA. At 47 years old, she played Rosie, the sharp-tongued, nosy neighbor and fellow maid in Hazel. Her lively and often meddlesome presence made the dynamic between Hazel and Rosie one of the show's most memorable elements. Despite a prolific career spanning nearly 4 decades with over 300 roles, Maudie's personal life was filled with quiet heartbreak that followed her into her work. She married Charles Fulmer Prickett II in 1941, and after his death in 1954, she struggled to balance grief with raising their 2 children while continuing her demanding acting schedule. In 1961, she married Dr. Ekel W. Cartwright, but the marriage ended in tragedy just 1 year later when he passed away, a loss that struck during her busiest period on Hazel and left her emotionally shaken. Her final marriage to Cyril Bernard Cooper, a former mayor of Pasadena, brought some stability, yet the repeated loss of her partners created a lingering sadness. As her career continued, Maudie remained a familiar face in television, appearing in series such as Bewitched and The Mod Squad, often cast in strong-willed supporting roles that mirrored her resilience. However, her health gradually declined due to chronic kidney failure, a condition that worsened over time and led to uremia. The illness quietly drained her strength, limiting her ability to continue working at the pace she once maintained, even as she remained dedicated to her craft until her final years. Maudie Prickett passed away on April 14, 1976, at the age of 61 in Pasadena, California, due to uremia caused by kidney failure. She was laid to rest at Mountain View Cemetery and Mausoleum in Altadena, California. With an estimated net worth of around $500,000, she left behind a legacy as one of Hollywood's most recognizable character actresses, a woman whose vibrant performances often masked a life marked by repeated loss and quiet endurance. Julia Benjamin, as Susie Baxter. Julia Benjamin was born on February 21, 1957, in Los Angeles, California, USA. At 8 years old, she played Susie Baxter, the young daughter of Steve Baxter in Hazel. Her innocent and gentle presence added a softer, emotional layer to the show's final season. Julia began her career early with Hazel, but like many child actors, she struggled to maintain momentum as she grew older. Although she appeared in projects such as Mr. and Mrs. Bojo Jones and The Jordan Chance, as well as television roles in The Rockford Files and My Three Sons, her opportunities gradually became limited. The image of a child star followed her closely, making it difficult to transition into more mature roles. And over time, the industry that once welcomed her began to close its doors. Instead of continuing to fight an uphill battle in Hollywood, Julia made a quiet but decisive choice to step away from acting. She withdrew from the spotlight entirely, avoiding the scandals and pressures that often accompany former child stars, and chose a more ordinary life outside of the entertainment world. As of 2026, Julia Benjamin is 69 years old and lives a private life away from Hollywood, having retired from acting decades ago. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million accumulated from her early career, she remains a quiet reminder of how fleeting childhood fame can be, and how some stories continue not on screen, but in the silence that follows. Howard Smith, as Harvey Griffin. Howard Smith was born on August 12, 1893, in Attleboro, Massachusetts, USA. At 67 years old, he played Harvey Griffin, the gruff, demanding client in Hazel. His stern and imposing presence brought tension and realism to the series, contrasting sharply with the show's lighter comedic tone. Coming from a much older generation of performers, Howard built his reputation long before television, with standout work on Broadway in Death of a Salesman and in films like Kiss of Death. However, as television rose rapidly in the 1960s, he faced increasing pressure to adapt to faster production schedules and demanding filming routines. Memorizing large amounts of dialogue in short periods became a constant challenge, especially for an actor trained in the slower, more methodical world of theater. While he continued to secure roles in projects like The Twilight Zone and Perry Mason, the transition highlighted the growing gap between traditional stage acting and modern television expectations. In his personal life, Howard experienced loss when his wife, actress, and singer Lillian Boardman passed away in 1953, leaving him to navigate his later years alone while continuing to work. Despite these challenges, he remained committed to his craft, appearing regularly on television and maintaining a presence in the industry even as his health and energy gradually declined with age. His dedication reflected a lifelong attachment to performance, shaped by decades of experience across vaudeville, radio, and film. Howard Smith passed away on January 10, 1968, at the age of 74 in Hollywood, California, due to a heart attack. He was cremated, and his ashes were interred at Kensico Cemetery in Valhalla, New York. With an estimated net worth of around $400,000, he left behind a legacy rooted in the golden age of theater and radio, remembered as a seasoned actor who carried the weight of an earlier era into the fast-changing world of television. Cathy Lewis as Deirdre Thompson. Cathy Lewis was born on December 27, 1916, in Spokane, Washington, USA. At 45 years old, she played Deirdre Thompson, the sharp, sophisticated sister of George Baxter in Hazel. Her refined yet biting presence added tension and contrast, enriching the show's character dynamics. Before television, Cathy had already achieved major success in radio, especially with My Friend Irma. She married fellow actor Elliott Lewis in 1943, and together they were known as one of radio's most iconic couples, collaborating on projects like On Stage and Suspense. However, their marriage gradually deteriorated, and in 1958, Cathy filed for divorce on the grounds of mental cruelty. The separation shattered both her personal life and professional identity, as it ended not only a marriage, but also a powerful creative partnership, leaving her to rebuild her career alone. Determined to move forward, Cathy transitioned into film and television, taking on roles in The Devil at 4 o'clock, and later securing her recurring role in Hazel. Just as her career began to stabilize again, her health took a devastating turn when she was diagnosed with cancer. The illness progressed quickly, cutting short what many believed could have been her most mature and impactful period as an actress, as she continued working despite the physical toll. Cathy Lewis passed away on November 20th, 1968, at the age of 51 in Hollywood, California, due to cancer. With an estimated net worth of around $300,000, she left behind a legacy shaped by both artistic brilliance and personal struggle, remembered as a voice and presence that once defined an era of American entertainment before fading far too soon. Norma Varden as Harriet Johnson. Norma Varden was born on January 20th, 1898, in London, England. At 63 years old, she played Harriet Johnson, the refined yet sharp-tongued neighbor in Hazel. Her elegant and often aristocratic demeanor brought a distinct contrast that enriched the show's social dynamics. Before arriving in Hollywood, Norma was a gifted pianist and once considered a musical prodigy in England. However, economic pressures following turbulent times forced her to abandon music and turn to acting, a decision that reshaped her entire life. She built a long and steady career in both British and American cinema, appearing in major productions such as Casablanca and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, often portraying upper-class, sophisticated women. Despite her success, she never married, dedicating her life entirely to her craft, which gradually led to a quiet and solitary existence behind the scenes. As her career progressed, Norma continued to appear in notable films like The Sound of Music, where she played Frau Schmidt, and Witness for the Prosecution, maintaining her presence well into her later years. Her ability to adapt across decades kept her relevant in an ever-changing industry, even as she grew older and took on fewer roles. Norma Varden passed away on January 19, 1989, at the age of 91 in Santa Barbara, California, due to heart failure, just one day before her birthday. She was laid to rest at Santa Barbara Cemetery. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, she left behind a legacy as a distinguished character actress whose refined presence graced some of the most iconic films of her era, even as she lived much of her life in quiet solitude. Donald Foster as Herbert Johnson. Donald Foster was born on July 31, 1889, in Oil City, Pennsylvania, USA. At 72 years old, he played Herbert Johnson, the eccentric and absent-minded neighbor of the Baxters in Hazel. His quirky performance added a light comedic charm that made the neighborhood feel more vivid and alive. Unlike many actors of his time, Donald Foster entered film and television quite late, beginning his screen career well after establishing himself on stage. He had already built a respectable presence on Broadway with productions like Two Girls Wanted and The Ponderheart. But it was only in his later years that he became a familiar face on television through appearances in Perry Mason, Bewitched, and The Addams Family. Despite his long career, he remained in minor roles, never fully breaking into leading status, and largely depended on steady but modest work rather than major contracts or fame. His personal life remained relatively quiet, marked by a long marriage to Alice Boucher Gray, whom he wed in 1919 and with whom he shared 2 children. As he aged, his acting work gradually slowed, and he spent more time away from the spotlight, relying on the stability of his earlier career rather than pursuing new opportunities. His later years reflected the reality of many character actors whose contributions were steady but rarely celebrated on a larger scale. Donald Foster passed away on December 23, 1969, at the age of 80 at his home in Hollywood, California, due to natural causes. He was buried at Ferncliff Cemetery and Mausoleum in Hartsdale, New York. With little net worth and largely living on a modest actor's income, he left behind a quiet legacy as a dependable performer whose presence enriched countless productions without ever seeking the spotlight. Ray Fulmer, as Steve Baxter. Ray Fulmer was born on February 17, 1933, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA. At 32 years old, he played Steve Baxter, the younger brother of George Baxter, introduced to replace the original family in the final season of Hazel. His role was part of a major shift in the series, but it failed to revive the show's declining success. Ray entered acting relatively late after serving in the U.S. Army, discovering his passion for theater during his time in Germany. He built a modest career through Broadway with Auntie Mame, and later appeared in productions like Happiness is Just a Little Thing, called a Rolls Royce. However, his biggest opportunity came with Hazel, a role that was meant to redefine the series, but instead placed him in the difficult position of replacing beloved original characters. After the show ended, he continued working in television with roles in Guiding Light and Somerset, yet none of these projects brought lasting recognition, and his career gradually faded from the spotlight. His personal life also reflected instability, with his marriage to Sharon Young ending in divorce, followed by a quieter second marriage to Betty Lou. As acting opportunities became less frequent, Ray slowly stepped away from Hollywood, choosing a more private life away from the pressures of an industry that never fully embraced him as a leading figure. His later years were marked by distance from fame as he quietly transitioned into retirement. Ray Fulmer passed away on June 2, 2013, at the age of 79 due to an undisclosed illness. With an estimated net worth of around $500,000, he left behind a career defined by one pivotal moment that could not change his trajectory, remembered as the man who tried to carry a fading series but ultimately became part of its final chapter. Robert B. Williams as Barney. Robert B. Williams was born on September 23, 1904, in Glencoe, Illinois, USA. At 57 years old, he played Barney, a working-class neighbor and occasional acquaintance of the Baxter family in Hazel. Though his role was limited, his consistent appearances helped build the everyday realism that grounded the series. Unlike leading stars, Robert spent his entire career as a character actor, quietly appearing in over 150 films without ever becoming a household name. He built his reputation through small roles in major productions like Singin' in the Rain and North by Northwest, as well as television shows such as Perry Mason and Bonanza. However, this kind of career came with instability, as he was constantly moving from one short-term role to another, never guaranteed steady income or long-term security. Even at the peak of his productivity in the 1950s, when he appeared in dozens of films, he remained on the margins of fame, known more for his reliability than recognition. As he aged, Robert gradually shifted more toward television, taking on recurring roles in shows like Hazel and later appearing in series such as The Rockford Files and Marcus Welby, M.D. His final screen appearance came in Get to Know Your Rabbit, 1972, marking the quiet end of a career built on persistence rather than spotlight. Despite decades of work, his life remained largely out of public attention, reflecting the reality of many actors who sustained Hollywood from the background without ever stepping into its center. Robert B. Williams passed away on June 17, 1978, at the age of 73 in Orange County, California. He was buried at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City, a resting place shared by many figures of classic Hollywood. With an estimated net worth of around $400,000, his life stands as a testament to endurance in an industry where not every contribution is rewarded with fame, but many are essential to its foundation. Loren Gilbert, as Harry Knoll. Loren Gilbert was born on April 8, 1911, in Fairbury, Nebraska, USA. At 57 years old, he played Harry Knoll, a neighbor and acquaintance of the Baxter family in Hazel. His role as a familiar face in the neighborhood helped expand the social circle surrounding the Main family. Despite being a well-trained actor with a strong background in theater, Loren often struggled to gain full recognition in Hollywood. He built his reputation through stage performances and television roles in series like Love of Life and The Edge of Night, where he portrayed both sympathetic and villainous men. However, his transition to television sitcoms like Hazel came with frustration, as he frequently felt undervalued and complained about having his scenes reduced or cut during production. Even with appearances alongside major talents in projects like Kraft Television Theater and Combat Fatigue. Irritability, he remained confined to supporting roles, never fully escaping the shadow of being seen as a secondary performer. While his career continued steadily, Loren remained more connected to theater than Hollywood, often returning to stage productions such as Susan and God, where he could fully express his abilities without the constraints of editing or limited screen time. His long marriage to actress Jackson Perkins, whom he wed in 1940, provided stability throughout his life, and together they raised 3 children while maintaining a shared passion for performance. Still, the sense of being overlooked in the film and television industry lingered quietly behind his professional journey. Loren Gilbert passed away on February 6, 1998, at the age of 86 in Los Angeles, California. With an estimated net worth of around $600,000, he left behind a career defined by persistence and dedication. Remembered as a skilled actor who never stopped performing, even when recognition did not fully follow. So lives once filled our screens with laughter now echo through time with stories of triumph, loss, and quiet resilience. Some found lasting legacy, others faded far too soon, but each left a mark that still lingers today. So what do you remember most about Hazel, 1961, and its unforgettable stars? If this tribute moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, so their stories continue to live on.